Welcome to the Savor the Story podcast, where books and snacks are life. I'm Nicole.
And I'm Vanessa.
And welcome to episode 0.
Yes, Woo. Episode 0, finally.
It's time.
Yes. Okay, so we are going to use episode 0 to tell you a little bit about the podcast and about ourselves so that you can get to know us and our reading styles and our everything about the podcast before you jump into it. And yeah. Okay, so the podcast. We are going to have weekly episodes every Sunday, and the episodes are going to just be about what we read that week and what our reviews are and what we were snacking on that week, of course. And then obviously a little bit about what's going on in our lives. So every week we're going to give our reviews of what we were reading, and in those reviews we will try to be as non-spoilery as possible. I think at some point in the future we may have some episodes that are solely dedicated to certain books, and so those will be full spoilers, but we will tell you ahead of time. And in our normal weekly episode, if we are going to say a spoiler at any time, we'll definitely give you a heads up so that you can move forward if you want to.
Skip 30 seconds here.
Yes, exactly. So that's kind of the overview of what you're going to get from us every week in the podcast. We will eventually have a book club, probably a bi-monthly book club. We'll see how it goes, but to where we will read your reviews for the books that we read as well. And then also in the future have a YouTube version of the podcast as well. So it will be audio for right now, but we'll let you guys know as soon as we're going to be audio or video as well. So I think that's the rundown of the podcast. So now we're going to give you information about us. And since I've already done all the talking, Nicole, please tell us about you.
Hi, guys. I am super excited to be on this podcast with Vanessa. We've been talking about this for a really long time, so I'm really excited that it's finally actually happening. So about me.
Finally.
Finally. I have a husband. I am married. My husband's name is Mike, and I'm telling you this because I will not keep explaining to in all the episodes. I don't want you guys to have to listen to me explain my husband, Mike. So Mike is my husband, and we have one child. His name is Ethan. We have 2 dogs. I have one who's 5. His name is Remy, and he's a dachshund, and he is the cutest puppy who's ever puppied. And then I have Bison, who is a 12-year-old Shih Tzu, and he is the old-ass man in the family who grumbles about everything. So that's exciting. And then I would say things about myself that are not book-related, I guess. I would consider myself to be like a collector of hobbies more than somebody who does hobbies.
Okay.
Yeah, I know. I was like, I go to the store and I'm like, you know what? That looks like a good time. And so I buy like a bunch of stuff and I take it home and then I do it and I'm like, man, I really suck at this. And then I put it in my closet and I'm like, I'll get to that later. And now I have a bazillion and a half hobbies. But you know, it is what it is. I still enjoy finding hobbies, and you know, like whatever gives you joy, man. But I also, the less enjoyable hobbies that I have are things like running, and my husband likes to bike.
That is less enjoyable.
Yeah, it's a less enjoyable
right.
hobby. But, you know, if you care about your health, like whatever. And then my husband likes to bike, and we've done that a couple times, which is turning out to be like, I don't know, running and biking and like working out and like stuff like that. I feel like they become more enjoyable the better you are at them. And I've just never hit that point where I'm like, man, I'm awesome at this. So there'll always be my secondary hobbies. So, okay, that's me. What about you, Vanessa?
Okay, so I am also married. His name is Tim. We've been married 12 years. And then we have no kids, but we have 4 fur children. And it's a lot. We have 2 dogs, and I also call them puppies, even though they're not puppies. We have Abby, who's 11. She's our little old girl. And Ollie, who is about to be 5 in a week, I think. But I want to also point out with Ollie, we also call him Boy. So if you ever just randomly hear me say, Boy did this, it means Ollie. And then we have 2 cats whom I love dearly and also am so done having cats. They are 14, so they are old, but I'm so done with having cats. Mostly done having a litter box for sure. And then other things about me that are not book related, I also am a collector of hobbies like you. And I think though that my collection of hobbies is like to an extreme. Like I will buy all of the things that are associated with that, and I get pretty okay at it. Like I stick with it for a while, but then I find a new thing, and the old thing just becomes a pile of things in my closet. So
that's a pretty good way to explain that.
Yeah. So there's that. And then also I will say though, one hobby that has taken hold and I don't think that will go away is my hobby love of, I don't know what to call it, of bullet journaling. So for those that don't know what bullet journaling is, it's basically a planner that you build yourself. It's like a blank notebook. There is like a full methodology to it and everything, like this man who created it. Like you can go online and find exactly what bullet journaling is supposed to be. But it's turned into this very creative, like artsy thing that is sometimes much more than it needs to be, for sure. But I have definitely fell in love with bullet journaling, and it's literally the only planner that I've ever stuck with. I love the idea of planners, but I have never been able to actually finish a full, like, built out planner. But with bullet journals that I've built myself, I am now in my 6th year of doing that, and I love it. So bullet journaling is definitely, and all things like stationery, stickers, markers, things like that, is definitely like a hobby that I am definitely stuck into. And then another thing that I do, I guess, like regularly is I listen to true crime podcasts. Well, actually, not just podcasts. I mean, true crime podcasts, yes, for sure. But pretty much anything true crime, I'm obsessed is a weird word because it's true crime. You don't really want to be obsessed with it. But I basically devour anything like a documentary, like anything true crimey. I get real into listening to and watching. So there's that.
So note to self,
then,
if I need to hide a body, you're the one.
That's right. Tim actually says all the time, like, I'm pretty sure you're only listening to this stuff to, like, get notes. Like, you just take notes for, like, a later date. I'm like, well, be nicer to me. And then I guess my last hobby, I will call it, is I do work out a lot. I feel like it's a newer hobby for me, but it's so regular for me now. I think that it's could be considered a hobby, right? Like
Yeah.
4 or 5 days a week I'm lifting, so that's a hobby. We'll take it.
Yeah.
Now it's all podcast related topics. So book preference stuff and snacks. So Nicole, what do you want to tell us about first? Your book preferences or your favorite snackies?
Oh my gosh, I get to choose. Oh,
Yes.
this is a lot of pressure. Yeah, this is a lot of pressure. I'm gonna choose
Sorry.
snacks. I'm gonna choose snacks. I
Great.
I absolutely love snacks. I should probably first preface with the fact that I am a vegetarian. So
Oh, yes.
I could say, you could say that there's argument there to say that I am limited in the snacky potential, but I feel like that just gives me more license to try and be more creative, because I really do enjoy baking and cooking, and, you know, making myself like, you know, some fancy ass coffee or something, because I don't know if you want to call it a love language, but I do enjoy it a lot.
I was going to say, everything you've ever baked that I've eaten has been delightful. So I'm going to go ahead and say you should keep baking.
Fair enough. And I can do that. I will do that. That sounds like a great idea. But actually, my favorite food, I would say, or snack, is not something that I've ever baked. Which it's
That would
actually
be weird.
Yeah. It's probably I'd have to say like guac. I love some guac and chips. Like I actually ate like a whole bowl of guacamole last night, and it was delicious, and I have no regrets. So
As you should not.
right. It's like one of those like you can eat something and it's like 0 calories or whatever. Like, I don't know if that's a thing for guac, but it is for me in my household. It doesn't count towards anything except happiness.
All right. Excellent.
Okay. So that's about all my snacky news. How about you, Vanessa?
So my favorite snacks. Okay, let's start with, I do not bake. So all the baking's going to be up to you. Thank you. I have one very vivid memory of me and one of my friends trying to make Christmas cookies one year, and they were a disaster. It tasted all right, but they looked like a 4-year-old made them, which, okay, fine. And then, but my favorite snack is probably chips and salsa. Chips of any kind, really. I want all things salty and all of the chips and all of that stuff. But chips and salsa for sure is like my number one go-to. I do like some chips and guac, so I will eat that too. But I think chips and salsa is my go-to thing.
Mm-hmm.
So, that's all my snacks, I think. So, now, the other big podcast topic.
The
All
other half of the
things
podcast.
Books. Yes. I would say like the other, like an 80% of the podcast.
That's fair.
Is going to be all books. However, I will say though, I'm pretty sure talking about like snacks and stuff like that is what originally started the conversation of a podcast.
Right.
I think that it was like your first inclination was like, oh, we both like food.
And then while we're always out getting food, you're like, you know what else I like? Books.
Right. Yeah.
Okay, yeah, so favorite genres, I can do that. So I feel like I like all the genres. I kind of like that whole thing I said earlier about, oh yeah, like I dabble in all hobbies. It's kind of the same thing with books. I am everywhere with books. I don't feel like I stick to one genre. I feel like I just kind of read how I feel, so it kind of puts me everywhere. I would say probably my wheelhouse, if I had to pick one, is history, and I say history, but I have to be really like specific when I say history, because I don't want to read a history book that matches the Google, if that makes sense. Like, if I can read it on Google, I don't want to read it. I don't want to read it on the book. I want the book to be like stuff that I can't easily find out from the internet, and so that kind of limits some of my history books, but that's my preference. I also really enjoy fantasy books. I enjoy fiction books. In the last year or so, I've started reading more young adult and romance books, which I've really enjoyed. But yeah, those are my favorite genres. I don't really dabble outside of that. So
for the history books, do you prefer it to be like first person, since like first person stories and stuff like that, or something like that? Because those are obviously things that you wouldn't be able to Google. Right. Do you prefer those?
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, I've read some of those, but usually the history books that I'm reading are like, it's not so much that you can't find it on the internet, but it's mostly you can't find it easily. So it's like varied sources, or like you're saying, first person or something like that. It's like I don't want to feel like I'm reading a Wikipedia page. Is the easiest way to explain that. Yeah. So.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. All right, favorite books, yes. So this year I read Circe, and it was the best book that I've read all year, and I really, really liked it. I read like 2 or 3 books following Circe, and I was like, this is not Circe. These books suck. Like, if you're comparing them to Circe, they fail. But yeah, so I would say this year Circe has been my favorite book so far. But before that, or even still now, if you want to say, like, I really enjoyed the book The Martian. That's probably a book that I could go back and read again, see if I like it still. And that's a good experiment. But I also really enjoyed this year One Dark Window and Two Twisted Crowns came out. I really enjoyed that series. So I would say Circe this year, favorite series. One Dark Window, Two Twisted Crowns, favorite series. But if I had to say like a favorite author, I don't know that I would be like, I have a favorite author of all times, because I feel like I read more on feel, so I don't really pay attention to authors that much. So, but I have like an author who writes, her name is Susanna Kearsley, and she writes time slip romances. And I would say I enjoy most of her books, and I enjoy her her writing style as an author. But I think that's just because I consider those to be like my cozy go-to books when I am, like when you're in a reading slump or something like that. So, yep. Yeah, I'd say those are my genres. Those are my, favorite books and authors. But I do have to tell you, I do not do recommendations. I will not do them. I hate them. That's like my level of rating books. If I give a recommendation, it will only be because that book is like the best book I ever read, because I hate giving recommendations to people. If somebody's like, hey, Nicole, would you recommend this book? I'm like, I can neither confirm nor deny that I've read that book, and that it may or may not be good. I cannot do it. I absolutely hate doing it because I'm afraid that person's going to read the book and they're going to be like, so you really liked that book, Nicole? And then the judging is just too much.
It's just an anxiety thing.
Yeah, probably. It really is. So, but.
All right. That's fair. I think that's fair.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so my turn.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you for all of your book information. Okay, so before I get into my like favorite genres and books and all that kind of stuff, I want to point out something that I think is necessary to know before you know what books I like and dislike going forward. So there's a thing called aphantasia, and it's basically where like you don't see in your mind the pictures and stuff that maybe other people see. So like sometimes when people are reading, they comment that it's like a movie for them in their mind, or like they can vividly see, like if somebody says like there's a hallway with a blue door, like you can vividly see that, where I, on the other hand, cannot. So I looked up this thing online for like an aphantasia test to see, and it's kind of like a spectrum. It's basically like if somebody tells you to imagine a red apple, a person with no without aphantasia, it's actually called hyperphantasia, which would be a number 1, which is like perfectly realistic, as clear as seeing a red apple. So it's like the clearest picture. It's basically like the apple is in front of you. Mm-hmm. And then number 5, which would be aphantasia, is no image. I only know that I'm thinking of a red apple. Okay. And that's where I am. So like I don't see an outline of the apple. I don't see like a faint image of an apple. I literally, like if I close my eyes, I literally just see like black darkness. Like I don't visualize or see anything. So knowing that going into my books, when it's a book that is very heavily into like explaining what the view of things are, or like what does this person look like, or what does this house look like, or this environment that you're in, if it's very, very detailed, I get lost very fast. So a lot of times I will like skim through those parts in books. Mm-hmm. And for me to really like books and enjoy them, it has to be very character heavy. So if there's characters that I have deep feelings about, whether love or hate, I will typically like the book, because I'm able to connect to something. Where mm-hmm. if it's fully like world building and all descriptions of what people and things look like, it's really hard for me to connect to that. So knowing that, that may be a reason why I like or dislike something that like other people
right.
liked or disliked. Right. So,
right.
So for genres, I'm very heavy in fantasy. I'm not as varied as Nicole when it comes to genres. Like I'll dabble sometimes, but for the most part, I don't like move away from the stuff I know I like. And in the past, when I have, I've usually disliked them. So like I don't read history stuff. Well, I won't say I never have, because I have read some like first person type history type books. Mm-hmm. Historical fiction, I've read a few of those as well, and I do enjoy them. But for the most part, I read fantasy, romance, some sci-fi stuff, and thrillers. I think are my like top things. Something to point out, thrillers, I used to read them a lot, but now my sister and I do a monthly, I don't even know if you want to call it a monthly book club. It's basically just like we read one, we talk about it, we read another one, we talk about it. We don't have like a set schedule really. It's kind of been like every 2 weeks, I would say, we're talking about one. And she's heavily into thrillers, so we basically have just been doing thrillers.
Nice.
And then but when I pick for myself, it's mostly fantasy. So for favorite books, okay, so I did some counting, and let me start by saying I don't really read a lot of standalone books. It's almost all books that are part of a series or a duology or whatever, trilogy, whatever it is. Mm-hmm. And it's mostly because, I mean, I enjoy them, but also, like, I don't like to pick what my next book is. I like to have it picked for me. So if I spend my time picking the beginning of a series, then that means I know that the next however many books are laid out for me. So I did some counting. I looked back at like an old spreadsheet that I have, and so this is over the last, I don't know how many years, like 8 years or something. I don't know. Out of 315 books that I've read over the last however many years, 59 of them were standalone. Which means 250 something of them were part of a series. So that tells you right there how much I do not like reading standalones. And I don't even know why. It's just, I don't know what happened to me. That's just what happened.
I know. Well, plus, it doesn't help that as soon as you read a book, you're like, I have to know what happens.
I can't. There's been very, very few series that I have not finished. And when I say very few, it's probably like less than 5 that I haven't finished, because usually I get some sort of like anxiety about like needing to know what happens to the characters. And there have been some series that I very much disliked, and I have finished them because the need to know is stronger than my hate of the series. So it's yeah, it happens. But I guess in that conversation this fits in. I wasn't sure if I was going to say it, but I'm gonna.
Oh, your secret.
Your
book secret.
Yes, my book secret. One of the series that I am currently refusing to finish. I'm not 100% sold on it, but we're like 90% sure I'm not going to keep going with the series, is ACOTAR. And I apologize.
Yeah, I wondered if you were going to bring that up.
Yes, I feel like I have to, because it's immediately like, oh, you like romance, you like fantasy, you're into romantasy books. They're going to be like, oh, you're a ACOTAR person. I'm not. I did read the first 4. Yes. I refused to read the last one because I hate Nesta. So for all of you that love ACOTAR, you know who I'm talking about. But I just hate that character, and I know the last book is all about her, and I can't do it. So I do have some thoughts on the next book. There's like theories and stuff of what the next book will be. And there's like maybe 1 or 2 characters that if it's about them, I might read it. But if it's about anyone else, I will not. So I apologize to everyone who loves ACOTAR. But hopefully we can find some common ground on some other romantasy type books or other fantasy books. So yeah. But so for books, I don't really have any standalone books that I have that are like favorites of all time. Being that I've read so little of them, it's kind of hard for me to pick them out. So favorite, series that I've read, my all-time favorite I think is the Shadowhunter series. It's by Cassandra Clare. It's the Mortal Instruments was the first series that came out, and then she wrote a prequel, which is the Infernal Devices. So those 2 are my favorite. There is a sequel to Mortal Instruments as well. I actually haven't read that full series yet. And then there's another one, I can't remember the name of it, but it comes out in between Mortal Instruments and Infernal Devices, and I've read that one as well. But I just love the world. I love the Shadowhunter world. I love all the characters. It's just something, it's a series that I read early on, kind of in my reading adventures, and it's just kind of always stuck with me. And then I don't know if I have any other ones that like really stick out. I think Harry Potter's an easy one to say, just because they are so massive, and it's easy to kind of get sucked into the fandom of Harry Potter.
Right. Yeah.
But I did read all of those like back to back to back. I read them all when they were already all out. I never had to wait on them. So I definitely read them all with no breaks in between. And then I also kind of like grew up in the time frame. I was the right age for the series, like the Twilights, the Hunger Games, the Divergent series, like all of those things. I was the right age. I know we were both the right age for that. I just gravitated towards them and you didn't. But so I don't know if I would call them like my favorites, but I do have like a soft spot for them because they're the ones that really got me into reading and into fantasy and into like all that stuff. So yeah, I think did I miss anything with my
no,
with my reading?
No, I think you got everything. All the important things.
Excellent.
Yeah,
exactly. So now that you know a little bit about our life, you know what our snacky choices are, you know what our book preferences are, hopefully that helps you kind of connect to us a little bit and you stick around and
please come back
listen to us. Keep going. Yes. And obviously recording a podcast is a little weird, so please stay with us for like 15 episodes at least. If we're still terrible after 15 episodes
or 115,
then you're welcome to leave us,
like whatever.
Okay, great. Yes. I like that plan. So before we leave episode 0 though, so usually what we're going to do is a blind discussion question. For this one, we pre-picked it, so we apologize. But next episode, you're going to have a blind discussion question at the end. So this question, and you're going to go first. What was your gateway book for a specific genre? So any genre you want to talk about, that was your gateway book to that genre.
I get to go first. Hell yeah. All right.
Yes.
So, gateway books. I should have prepared for this better. I let you down. But off the top of my head, if I had to say some gateway, like history, like I said, history has been around forever. I would not be able to tell you what my gateway history book was because I've been reading history for a very long time. But
that's fair.
Yeah, but I will do some deep research on that and see if I can find that, like, something from 2012 or something like that. But I would say for fiction books, have you ever heard of the book called The World Without Us by Alan Wiseman?
I have not.
And so it's a great book. And it kind of feeds into that. I like the variedness, and I don't like to be able to just Google it and get the answer right away. It's about, like, if people disappeared from the earth, like, like that, snap of the fingers, like, how long would it take for the earth to, like, return to what it was before humans were there? And it kind of, it kind of goes through everything, like, because, how long before, like, the roads disappeared and before nature reclaimed, but then it also goes into other things, like, like, what happens to the nuclear power plants and, like, like, stuff like that. So I found that really interesting. There's another book out there.
So what did that get you into?
I'd say fiction. That's probably a fiction read.
Okay.
Yeah. So I would say maybe not what put me into fantasy but what tipped me over the edge into fantasy, like that started the fantasy train this year, I would say, is I read like in, like November last year, I read the Ward Witch series, and after that I was like, I could do that again. I could do that again. I could do that again. And here we are. It's like my main genre this year.
Nice.
So I'd say off the top of my head, that's probably what some gateway books in recent memory. How about you?
Okay. Yeah, I know it's hard to, especially because we've been reading for so long, it's hard to pick out specific books that maybe started a certain genre or whatever. So like for thrillers and stuff, it's really hard for me to pick out exactly what books I read that made me enjoy reading thrillers and stuff. For fantasy, I also did a little deep diving, and I'm fairly certain that Twilight was my fantasy kickoff, which I'm not really sure how I should feel about that.
We can just bleep it out.
Seem to find right. I can't seem to find anything fantasy before that. And what makes me even more ashamed is that I saw the movie before I read the books.
Oh my gosh. The books put you over on the movie.
The movie is terrible, but some reason I watched this movie and was like, oh my God, I have to read these books. And so I did. And here we are now, however many years later, and I'm sucked into fantasy. So it's that's embarrassing. But you know what? It's fine. Here I am. Whatever. Shortly after that, it was right after Twilight, then I completely devoured the Harry Potter books. And then I think at that point, there was like 2 or 3 of the Mortal Instruments out at that point. So like I jumped into those, and then I was on the release every year of a new book with her, for those series. And I just kind of jumped into everything I could find after that, but it's really disappointing.
We've had a lot of controversial things to say this podcast.
I enjoy them. I know, right? Everyone's going to be like, we can't listen to her anymore. But
surprise, this episode did the opposite of what we wanted.
Yeah, I think that's everything for episode 0. Unless you have something else, then we just, I can tell you where to follow us and how to email us.
You know what? That would be a great idea.
Okay, so you can go find us on Instagram at Savor the Story Pod. You can go to our website at savorthestorypod.com. And on our website, you can fill out the form there to send us an email. There's a little drop down there. You can send us stuff about books, whether you want us to read something or you're really enjoying something. You can send us some snacky options or snacky recommendations that you want us to try. You can send us anything you want us to know there. And then I think that's it. So
for now,
hope that you stick with us. Yeah. And come back next week. And that's all.
Yay! All right. So I have no idea how to end a podcast episode, so you guys are just going to have to trust us when we say that the episode is over now. We're done. Come back for the next week for the next episode.
Come back, and we'll figure out how to say goodbye. Okay? Bye.
Bye.